there, it's Dan Kenner from The Casual Author. Looking forward to another episode with you today. It is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, as I record this. And this is episode number 70 of the podcast. Crazy how we are already here. Today, we're talking to Stephanie Miller about her mantra, consistency, clarity, and confidence. So it's a discussion about how, as an author, you can use these to become a more successful writer, how you can be more successful in your writing sessions, get more done, and also be more satisfied with your work. So I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. I know that I learned a lot from it. Before we dive into that, of course, we want to go through the updates. In terms of homestead updates, I don't have a lot of updates on that front, mainly that the weather is driving me absolutely insane. It's this winter has been long and drawn out. You know, it started to warm up a little bit here. We're getting low 40s, high 30s weather as the high. Of course, lows are always in the teens. That hasn't changed. But the snow is actually beginning to melt. And then just a few days ago, I woke up to 6 inches of snow, which I was admittedly not thrilled about, mainly because we live in a very windy spot. So southeast Idaho is actually, we've got tons of windmills on all the mountains here. All the hills are not really mountains because there's so much wind. Well, does that mean for us? It means drifts, really unfortunate drifts. So when I went out with the 6 inch snow, it wasn't simple 6 inches to trudge through. It had blown up against the shop doors where I keep the hay, upwards of 5-6 feet. And so in order to even feed the goats that morning, I had to dig out the shop so that I could even get to the hay to feed the goats, which, it's fine. But if this had happened at the beginning of the winter, it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the problem is it's almost April. And we're getting drifts like that. I shouldn't be dealing with that. Now, obviously, we moved here knowing it would be cold. I think we were just, it was a trick. We got some trick winters when we first moved in because it was not that bad. It was cold. I remember March still being somewhat cold, but there wasn't this much snow on the ground and it wasn't still snowing. It has snowed nearly every day for the past 2 weeks. It does not feel like March. It feels like the middle of January. So regardless, grateful for the moisture. Idaho has historically had drought issues, not having those issues now. Other than that, things are fine. I think the goats are also getting a little tired of it because they just kind of mull about. And when it snows, our goats are they're babies about the weather. They will hide from the snow. They will hide from the rain. It's funny because the horses right across the way, our neighbors have horses. They will sleep in the snow. They'll prance in the rain. They love the weather. Our goats don't even like a little bit of droplet of water on them. They hide. So they've been spending a lot of times in their houses. And I think they just get bored, right? They want to jump, they want to run around, but there's just snow and they don't like trudging through it. They'll create their little pathways. It's kind of funny to see their preferences. You can see where they cut their way through, create their pathways. But I try to shovel out for them as much as I can. Sometimes they beat me to it, though. They just like tromp out their own paths and then they won't touch anything else, just their narrow paths. It's a little funny. I have to get a picture of it one time. But yeah, they're tired of it. I can tell they're tired of it. The chickens, they don't seem to care. They're as happy as can be, and we're still getting eggs, which I'm very, very grateful for. Unfortunately, there is one chicken that laid an egg outside of the nesting boxes, and she started a trend for the other hens. There are now at least 2, potentially 3 chickens that refuse to lay where they're supposed to lay. Fortunately, they're kind of predictable and they lay them in one spot within their coop, but it's still a little bit frustrating that I have to go into the coop and find the eggs, and Easter egg hunts are not what I'd like to spend my time doing, particularly when it's cold outside. Still, at least they're laying. Grateful for that. No complaints there, but we just need to figure out how to train them to lay in the boxes. I guess this is a little bit of an update. We suspect that there are egg eaters. So if you know anything about chickens, once they start eating eggs, it's not really possible to train it out of them. At least there's not a way that I've learned. One, because you don't know which chickens are laying or eating them unless you're sitting there watching, which I don't really have time to do all day. 2, they're chickens, right? Like you can't really train them. Don't eat that. That is not like they're a human or an animal. Well, I guess they're animals, like a dog or a trainable pet. So if they are eating the eggs, it's a problem. I've been going out and there have been fewer eggs than we're used to. It's been anywhere from like 6 to 10, so no complaints. But there were a couple days where we got like 11, 12. I'm thinking, oh, that's weird. It's a little bit lower than usual. And a couple days ago, I saw remnants of yolk inside one of the boxes, which normally has 2 or 3 eggs. And so that to me meant that probably a chicken pecked it, broke it open, and realized, hey, this is food, and then they ate it. So I'm hoping that's not the case, because yesterday I didn't notice any yolk in the nesting boxes. But if they are eating eggs, that's a problem. We need to, the only way to deal with that is to find which chicken is eating it and put them in the freezer, for lack of a better term. We won't get into details there. Will we do it? I don't know. It depends on how big the problem is. There's other ways we can kind of prevent it, kind of confuse them by putting more golf balls in, rocks or something that they can peck at, realize, oh, this doesn't do anything, and then they'll kind of stop pecking. So that is possible. We can try it. That's why we put golf balls in there. One, to train them where to lay their eggs, and two, make them think that they can't eat the eggs, because if they peck them, it won't do anything. So we'll see. We can see if there's something we can do to quote unquote train it out of them. In any case, I believe that's it for the homestead updates. Just hoping that the snow stops and that we can, I mean, it doesn't even have to be super warm. As long as the snow is stopping and it's not so wet and icy, there's just so much water. It's insane how much water there is right now. In terms of author news, things are moving at a pretty steady pace. I'm trying to figure out this whole YouTube thing. I am uploading the podcast episodes to YouTube. I'm obviously doing a video update for the people that prefer to go to watch the YouTube channel for the podcast episode. I'm also trying to figure out the whole thumbnails and titling of videos. It's impressive the amount of work that can go into a YouTube channel. Work that I don't always have time to do. But be patient with me. I'm figuring it out. I'm trying to put updates up there as much as possible about my author business, about the homestead. Missed one last week because the family's sick. Fun situation. Most of my kids, well, some of my kids have been really sick, and it's hard to really do much when they're pretty sick. So the baby's sick too, which is very unfortunate. In any case, other than that, moving really quickly on some of my projects. So the trilogy that I co-signed, or excuse me, I signed a contract to co-sign is, wow, I'm all muddled. The contract that I signed to co-author a trilogy is moving along very well. We are right at the end of the first book already, which is great. This is just the first draft. Of course, we will have to go through the editing phase, but it's great to be making progress on that. I can usually write between 2,000 and 3,000 words a day if I'm pretty focused, which I have been. Dragon Blooded, because of the progress on this first book of that trilogy, flipped a little bit to the back burner, but I'm still making progress. I'm at about 27,000 words on that. If I'm not writing one, I'm writing the other. And like I said, I'm getting about 2 to 3K words per day. So I'm happy with that. The story is moving along very well. The ideas are flowing, so that is positive. Other than that, really just trying to figure out how to pull some of my audience from certain social media applications, such as TikTok. Given the situation, we're not going to speak about the TikTok ban and whatnot, but it is just a reality. So trying to prepare for that. I've learned from a lot of successful indie authors not to put all of your eggs in one basket, to diversify, get your content out to multiple places, try to be in as many places as possible, even if you're not super active on them, just so you have some fallbacks should things fall apart. Fortunately, I have not put all of my stock in TikTok. I mean, a lot of it's there, but it seems adequate timing to move off of it into YouTube, which, it seems to be going interesting. I wouldn't say it's going well, but it's going. So I believe that's it in terms of homestead and author news. Everything else seems to be relatively stagnant in a positive way. Steady, I should say. Steady right now. And then, we'll see how these projects go and how long it takes me to get them done. So I believe that is everything. So we'll go ahead and move over to the interview portion of the podcast. Hey, Stephanie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm looking forward to talking to you. It seems like you have a lot of really important experience when it comes to successful writing. We'll say it that way, right? Because success looks different for everybody. And it's hard you can't really put that into words for everybody, but you've got kind of a framework that we're going to discuss today about potentially reaching your full potential as an author, which I'm excited about. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit about how long you've been in the coaching business. Do you write and publish? How long have you been writing and publishing? Just want to hear a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been a writing coach since 2021, so heading on 2 years. Before that, I was a spiritual growth coach.
Okay.
So the way that I coach my authors and my writers is to connect the spiritual growth aspect to the writing aspect. And by that, I mean, I really coach them to look at creativity and writing as a spiritual growth practice and a way to connect with God and grow closer in that way. I am an author myself. I am published in 2020. Why I published in the pandemic, I don't know, but I did. And that book looked at spiritual growth and transformation. And my own writing project now I'm working on, I'm super excited about, is taking this idea of spiritual growth being creative growth interlinked and working on a book proposal for that. So linking spiritual growth with creative growth and what that looks like to reach your full creative potential. So essentially what I'm going to be talking to everyone about today with looking at what it looks like to honestly reach your full potential as a writer.
I think that's really amazing. So how did you come up with this idea? Where did this come from? Were you inspired by something early to before 2020 that made you think, I want to be motivational or I want to be a coach to authors? Like where how did you get into this? I'm just curious.
Yes, no, I love this question. So I was a spiritual growth writing coach or spiritual growth coach, and then I kind of tabled that for a little bit because I had children and
Mhm.
life and all of the normal things. And then my husband was military at the time, so then we moved, and then I had time on my hands, and my children were older, and so I'm like, okay, I really want to get back into the coaching and really kind of delve into what the next step is for me for my coaching ministry, Butterfly Beginnings. For that, I started writing my book, which is a self help Christian living, looking at spiritual transformation in the metaphor of a butterfly. So I look at the different stages of the butterfly and how it relates to our spiritual growth and transformation. And while I was writing that book, it was hard, right? I mean, writing a book is hard. There were a lot of things that I really feel like I could have used someone to come alongside of me and encourage me and help keep me accountable. And so for that reason, when an opportunity through Hope Writers, if anyone's familiar with Hope Writers, the writing community came up to become a certified writing coach. I knew that I really wanted to delve into that because I really wanted to be that support, encouragement, and accountability for other writers and authors that I really needed, that they can then take that confidence and that assurance to share their story. I mean, I really needed someone to be like, no, don't delete that. Because we all hit this point, right? Like when we're
Mhm.
writing our draft and we're almost there and we feel confident about it, then the next time we look at it, we're like, this is terrible. Who am I? Why do I think I could write? And so getting to that point, and so now I get to be that one person, like, don't delete that because I did make that mistake. And delete that content and that material. So now it's just really walking hand in hand alongside with other writers and authors to help them birth their book dream, or writing a blog, or even just writing consistently, because there's so much to be said about just making writing an everyday rhythm of your life.
There is definitely something to be said. Just coincidentally happen to be a word hoarder. I don't like to delete anything. I'm pretty sure I have scenes that I've
Yeah.
removed from my first book just hanging out in Google Docs because I'm too afraid to delete them, even though I finished the series. I'm just like, I just don't want to let the words go. So, but I can understand the mentality. I know there's a lot of authors that reach that point, the kind of lack of confidence of I thought this was going well and now it's not.
Mhm.
And it's a hard place to reach. And in terms of consistency, I will go ahead and attest to that. Ironically, once you figure out your little space, even if maybe you miss a day or two here or there, when it becomes a part of your life, it's just your day doesn't feel complete without it. And you just make time for it. And that's where I am right now. Even if it's only 30 minutes, 45 minutes a day, and that may sound like a lot to people, but for me, I'm just like, I need that time. And if I get to the end of my workday, or if I sometimes have to stay up late because I just don't feel like I've done what I wanted to do until I finish writing a little bit. So
Yes.
consistency gets you there. It's a really big success for me, at least. So let's talk a little bit
Yes.
about this mantra, if you want to call it that: clarity, consistency, confidence. I mean, there's a lot in those three words, are big words. You can
Yeah.
extrapolate a lot from them, and I'm sure obviously you can because you're planning on writing a book about it. But let's just talk briefly about it. So how does this framework, how have you found that it aids authors who may be struggling with their writing career?
Yeah, so I mean, clarity in and of itself, if we start with clarity, that first chunk, you look at it as, okay, what does it mean to be clear in why I'm writing and who I'm writing for? So clarity really comes at your why. Why are you writing? And then who are you writing for? So once you kind of figure that out, do some exercises, and just kind of figure out who your audience is, why you're writing to them, why you care, why they should care, it really kind of helps build that next bridge into consistency. So if you know what you're writing or what you should be writing, then you can easily kind of bridge over into the consistency piece. Okay, I know what I'm writing, so then I'm able to be consistent. I'm able to work at it and just make those little steps. And funny, you said that you don't feel right without writing your daily things, and I call my morning pages my sanity. So
Hmm.
my kids know that mommy needs her morning pages time and everything, her journaling time. If anyone has ever heard of the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, it is a great book. In fact, I would even say that that has really spurred me on and inspired me to work on my own book project related to this idea of creative awareness, creative potential, and spiritual transformation and what that looks like. But really having that consistency piece then builds up that next phase, which is confidence. So if we are consistent, we're gaining momentum, means we're usually making small goals in the consistency, not large goals, because I often find too much that we get a little ambitious on the kind of goal we set, and then we don't make it and we miss that mark. And then I'm the type of person who, if I can't do it the way that I said I'm going to do it, I don't want to do it at all. So it's just kind of like an all or nothing mentality. But really looking at the consistency, building that confidence, like, okay, I said I was going to write, 10, 15 minutes a day. And honestly, for me, sometimes that's all I get. And so looking at that, building that momentum and building that confidence to know, okay, I can do this and I'm going to show up. And as I show up, then trusting the inspiration and trusting that the words are going to come to me, but I don't show up before. I don't show up when inspiration comes. I show up before inspiration comes, waiting for it to come out.
There's so much to unpack there. Yes, I agree with everything you said. First of all, when it comes to clarity, I think that is the one piece that I know is very difficult for maybe not so much nonfiction authors as say fiction authors. I mean, because oftentimes with nonfiction, you have subject matter that is fulfilling a need or maybe has fulfilled a need for you, and you recognize, hey, there are other people that might be in this situation and experiencing this, and hey, this could be the steps to get out of it, or however you want to look at it. With fiction is a tad bit trickier because it's just like, I'm just writing an adventurous story and I want everybody to enjoy it, right? It's like, no, you need to know kind of who are you focusing on. So we'll come back to the piece about confidence in just a second, but I do want to ask you, when it comes to clarity, how do you recommend people go about identifying these things? Do you suggest that they write it down in a specific way? Do they need to revisit their clarity thought process regularly just in case it has changed? Does it change? What does that process look like in terms of identifying that clarity?
Yeah, so for me, I think clarity is something that we always need to come back to and always need to reevaluate. And if you're looking at why or what you think you should be writing or what you're passionate about, what you're leaning towards, there are really some components I think that can help us. And one is, what have you written about in the past? So just taking about like what you've written about in the past and or what you gravitate towards, what you like to read, these are the type of things that if you are kind of immersed in them and you have a lot of exposure to them, there's often a reason for that. And so if you're writing a memoir, for example, and you like to read memoirs and then you want to write a memoir, then it kind of gives you an idea, not only a memoir, writing it in kind of the narrative aspect, but also how you want to frame it and how you want to word it. So I always say, like, just the kind of books and the kind of words that we expose ourselves and we naturally gravitate to really helps us determine what we value and what we matter. And in terms of kind of almost like the spiritual growth aspect, I would say looking at values. So I work with my clients a lot on like a values exercise. And this is related to how much do you value authenticity, integrity, honesty, creativity. And so almost looking at like these core components of what you value can also tell you maybe like the elements or the key themes or main ideas that you might consider to put in your story as well.
And so it's the building blocks up to clarity, and that's a perfect
Yeah.
explanation of one way to take a look at it. Those values down at the root of, you know, your motivation, the whys, can really help you not only to find that clarity, but you know, springboard you into that confidence, right? Because once you
Yes.
recognize those values, you know intrinsically these are part of me. This is what I want to be. This is what I'm trying to be. Maybe you're not that way right now,
Yeah.
but these are
Yeah.
the values you'd like to embody.
Yes.
Can give you the
Yes.
confidence to be like, okay, now because I recognize those things in myself, this leads to the confidence to actually write. Maybe not necessarily the confidence in your writing, but you know, we'll get there in just a second.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really good place to start. So, you know, finding these, for some people, it might be difficult. Like for me personally, trying to find that clarity is actually ironically challenging, right? Because I don't like to plan. I don't like to overthink about things, but it's a necessary step to reach that consistency and then confidence in this framework, at least.
Yeah.
So when it comes to consistency, this is the killer question right here. And I don't know if there's a perfect answer for anything, but how do you maintain consistency? You know, there's a lot of people that reach consistency, say for a week or maybe a month or something, and then something happened, life event, child being born, house on fire. That literally happened to someone that I was talking to. Like, you just don't plan, or car on fire. How do you get that consistency back? How do you maintain that consistency for like a long period of time? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I really think for me, it just comes down to like realizing that being a writer is part of your identity.
Mm,
So like when you are writing, when you are engaging in that, whether it is just journaling, a brain dump, brainstorm, or actually working specifically on a project, like you are activating and like exercising that role that you have and that hat that you wear, and then the one that you've been given, right? Because I firmly believe that like not, you know, we are writers, and so we exercise in that gift and we use that gift. It's essentially like giving someone a tool and then them unwrapping the box, looking at it, and then putting it on the shelf and not
mm,
ever using it. But the reality is like as we write, we are given this tool, and from this tool, we use it to help draw others in and bring others into whether we want to inform them or inspire them or entertain them, right? So whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but we have this tool, we have this power. And I know it sounds cheesy, but like in order to unlock it, it becomes about consistency. It becomes about practice. It becomes about making it a habit, something that you can slip in your day that really doesn't take away from everything else, but it's maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's starting small and looking at it as not only, okay, this is my job, this is what I need to do, but it's something that I want to do. I work a lot with my clients as like switching this mindset of I have to write to I get to write. I get to write. So it's like this quick, you know, perspective shift of this opportunity to write, this almost privilege to write. You know, whether you are fiction or nonfiction, I think if we can flip it and say, I have to, I should, I need to, why can't
mm.
I? Why do I stop? Why do I procrastinate? And really flip it to what an opportunity, like what a gift, like how exciting, where are my characters going to take me today? You know, where are my words going to lead me today? But just kind of flipping it like that, I think it's almost like a treasure hunt, right? Like we get to start to explore and pick out and then really start to dive in and get to some good stuff.
And it's a perspective, right? A lot of it is
Yeah.
that perspective. And
Yes.
I think that's a really important piece. And maybe your perspective can't be positive and perfect at all times, but I think there's something to be said. I think you mentioned making it, you know, just a part of your life, feeling like it's a privilege to be there. That changes your mentality. So it's less of a responsibility and more of an excitement. You know, it's
Yes.
so even maybe you miss a day, it's not so much, oh, I didn't do my duty to my writing, you know,
Yeah.
whatever it is, I failed. Instead,
Yeah.
it's, well, that's too bad. You know, I feel some amount of disappointment that I didn't get to have that enjoyment, but I recognize that I'll get to do it tomorrow, or maybe I'll get to do it in a different time period. So I want to talk a little bit, and you know, I don't know if this is part of your framework, but I want to talk a little bit about regret, because I
Yeah.
think that that is the danger to a lot of people's consistency, is this idea of regret when you miss something, or maybe when something doesn't meet whatever your expectations are. Regret can get in the way of consistency. So do you have any recommendations of how to not focus on the regret of not doing something, you know, or missing the mark on something, and not letting that just eat away at you and prevent you from being consistent in your writing?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think if we look at regret, we could almost separate that into regret, like not making the time, right?
Mhm.
Like not actually setting that time. And then also looking at regret in terms of not writing, not feeling like, we wrote what we wanted to write or accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, like in that writing time. And I think for this vein of, that regret of just feeling like writing time was not what it wanted to be, I think it helps to take their pressure off of, I need to get, this scene mapped out, this chapter done, this many words and all of that, and really just look at it as kind of like that creative expression and that creative flow. So
Mhm.
if you're a pantser, I think this is like a perfect opportunity to just sit there and just like start to just let those words flow out onto the page or out, in the computer, and just allow yourself to not look at it as I have to do this and look at it almost as I'm missing the mark, but
Mhm.
this opportunity to allow that creativity to just flow through you. And so a little bit is better than none. I think if we kind of flip progress and success and not look at it as the word count that we get, or
Mhm.
even the productivity, the word count that we get, or the like how much we get done, but really flip it over into how did you feel like when you were writing? Like,
Mhm.
writers, we get into this creative flow, right? It's so hard to articulate, but we know what we're talking about when we say creative flow. Words are coming, your brain is moving, and you're like, only my fingers could go faster. Like, I need to get this out. So, like, that's how we start to draw in and measure this idea of productivity. And so, the only thing I would say about regretting in terms of the idea or like what you thought that time would look like is just take that pressure off. Focus
Mhm.
more on the experience of sitting down and writing and the writing practice itself, and less on the outcome. For the regret in terms of not getting it done, another quick kind of mindset tip I share is looking at it as a form of self-care or even soul care.
Yeah.
So you don't get your self-care or your soul care done that day, that's okay. There's always tomorrow to take and pick that up. It's this idea of meeting at the page, that blank page or that written draft, and just allowing your words, honestly, sounds so cheesy, allowing your words to just like nurture you and just like help like fulfill you.
I mean, however cheesy it is, it's
I
realistic,
know.
right? I mean,
I know.
sometimes what you want to hear sounds cheesy, but I can attest to that. So, in terms of the prior form of regret that you were discussing, there was a time, I think a lot of authors go through this of you see your target, say a year from now, and say, I want to have written X number of books. Publishing is a different story, right? But the writing part of it,
Yeah.
say I want to
Yeah.
write X number of books by the end of X year or this time period. You feel like you break it down into word counts per day, and then you feel like you have to hit those word counts, and when you don't, it's frustrating. And here's the funny part, and this is just like a um anecdotal experience from my perspective. When I made that shift, it's so much easier to hit your word count when you don't care about the word
Yes.
count. And it's just the irony, right? It's just we
Yeah.
get in our heads, we prevent ourselves from hitting our goals because it's all about a statistic or it's all about a number, and then the creativity doesn't flow. So, and this was kind of like a natural shift. I don't even remember reading anything that made me think this. I just realized one day when I focus on the word count, I don't like writing as much. It just bothers me. And so I just
Ooh.
stopped setting a goal like in my Scrivener system. I don't even set a
Yes.
goal for a daily anymore
Yeah.
because I don't care, right? I just come and I've got a block of time. I say, for this 30 to 45 minutes, I'm just going to write. And I don't care how much I write. And so the funny thing is when I had a goal of 1,000 words per day, I was hitting it, sometimes getting 600, 700. I was missing it a lot. Now that I don't have a goal, I'm writing like 2 to 3,000 words in
Yeah.
the same period of time. And it's so funny. The mind shift is so vast that it just
I know.
makes the writing so much better. And I'm enjoying it more and it flows better because I don't
Yes.
care how many words I write. I'm just taking that block of time, 30 to 45 minutes, and writing what I can. Um,
Yeah.
and
The
yeah, it's
pressure's
fun.
off.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So there's some evidence there for you, at least from my life. So something at the very beginning of the call, I pin marked it or I bookmarked it in my brain, is you talked about confidence in terms of you don't wait for the inspiration to hit, you come expecting the inspiration to come. And I've heard this before. I've heard
Hmm.
successful authors, whether they're traditionally or India published, doesn't matter. They've talked about this. Once you've created that consistency, the confidence just kind of follows behind, and you can come and expect that your muse, or however you want to call it, your inspiration will hit at that time. It might not come right away, it might take 5 or 10 minutes into your session, but you can expect that it will come. So let's unpack this a little bit, because I think this is the magic place that all writers want to reach, right? They hear this and they think, I want to be that. So we talked a little bit about the clarity, consistency, and how that can lead to it. But what are the final steps to reach that place? What can someone do in their mindset, or their daily schedules to reach that point where they can just expect the inspiration to hit when they need it to?
Yeah. So I think it really comes to making that consistency a discipline. Like, you're going to show up regardless. And the best example I can give is just like doing an exercise plan, right? Like, we show up, we don't feel like it at all, but we show up, we're like, okay, whatever, we go through the motions. And I don't know anyone, including myself, that has ever like drugged themselves out of bed, met with a trainer, or went to a workout and then like immediately was like, oh, I regret that. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Right. I mean, we always feel better after it. And so I really think in terms of the confidence, it's not even necessarily like what we're going to get while we're in it, because once we focus on just like showing up and trusting that it's going to come as we start typing whatever it is, then we start to look at the confidence of how we feel after we've done it, kind of building that confident momentum that, okay, I dealt with this distraction, I dealt with this obstacle, but I'm still here showing up. I think a really kind of practical tip would be to, and I'm going to say that I'm borrowing this from The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's book, but it really is to kind of do this idea of like a morning pages, and she calls it morning pages. So this idea of like just free writing, it's brain dumping essentially first thing in the morning, like clearing out all of that stuff, essentially because we know our brain is split, right? We have kind of our creative brain, and then we have our logical, rational, don't do that, don't share that, it's not perfect, wait till it's perfect, that part of the brain. And so the theory behind that is, if you don't allow like all of the rah in your head, essentially like your to-dos, your worries, your concerns, what happened last night, how you feel slighted, offended, any of that, like all that stuff that's kind of like rattling around, if you don't get that out, then it's going to kind of like cloud your creative potential. So the idea is that once you have this quick, she calls it 3 pages. Honestly, I do 2 pages. That's what I can do, right? Just looking at progress, not perfection. It's this idea of just doing like a brain dump, just getting out everything that's kind of going on in your head and placing it on the page. So then you feel, okay, now I'm like mentally prepared to allow that creative side, allow like the creative part of my brain to start operating. And so again, sounds kind of cheesy, right? Like, okay, Mr. Inner Critic, like I'm going to have you have your time morning pages and get it all out so then my creative side can play. But it makes sense though, because otherwise we're trying to write and work on things, and then we have these intruding thoughts of, is this good enough? I don't know. And really the one way that I have found to kind of not beat the inner critic, but at least kind of like tame him a little bit, or her, is to really just allow like that journaling and that morning pages to be that outward process, that outward free write, and then go into next step as that creative component.
I can say with definity that the number of times you get to your writing session excited, and then all of a sudden all of your troubles hit, like it's just like, oh, that's right, the roof is leaking. We had that recently. We don't have to get into it, someone's sick, or it's just funny how all day you feel like you're fine, and then all of a sudden you get to this point where you actually need it, and you can just be distracted by those things. So I can see how that'd be very cathartic, how it could be really helpful starting your day with that. If you don't mind me asking, roughly how long does it take you? Or so do you handwrite these troubles, or okay, I'm assuming that's part of the process, is handwriting as opposed to
definitely
typing it.
Handwriting. Yeah. I mean, I get interrupted. I have 3 young kids, so it's never, for me, it's not like, don't bother mommy, because I can't tell my 8-month-old, don't bother mommy. Yeah, exactly. I would say it usually takes me, with interruptions in the morning and normal things, probably like an hour. No, probably 45 minutes to an hour to kind of like get those 2 pages out. And then I do a couple of other things too to kind of help shuffle things around.
So, okay, this is going to be such a funny question, but coming from someone, I don't generally operate off of lists, and I know this isn't necessarily a list. It's that brain dump situation. It's
Yeah.
the offload of your troubles and your thoughts and your worries and even the positives potentially. So, what do you do with that after it? Is it just like you pop it somewhere and forget about it? Does it become a list? I would hope it doesn't become like a list for the day of I have to solve all of these things in my mind, because
Yes,
2 pages is a pretty long list for a single day.
I
So
know.
how do you not treat it that way?
Yeah,
Getting
I
this,
think early on for me, it was
okay.
a to-do list, and I was like, this isn't benefiting me. Like, it's stressing me out more
Hmm.
to like, like write it out and like have it face to face. And but really, I kind of help combat that is I have my separate planner, so I'm writing my like to-do
Mm,
list in my planner, like dumping all that. Okay, today I'm meeting with Dan for the podcast, and all the other stuff I have. And so that's kind of the way to get that out, and the other stuff really just comes out of what I'm feeling, like what I'm hoping for, what I'm expecting. And it's so hard to explain, but it just flows naturally. And technically you don't need to like go back and reread any of your morning pages or any of your journals. It's just kind of like it's pretty illegible, honestly. Like you just kind of scribble and it's just going. But there are some times where I know that something I'm writing is related to something that I need to share. And so I will kind of highlight it and then put it in a separate section, in a notebook
mhm.
or a journal or even type it, and then get back to it so I know it's there. But it's not going into that with these expectations. It's literally just kind of getting your lists and your to-dos off of your mind and then just kind of starting to pull at the thread of what are you thinking about today? What are you doing? What are you worried about? What are your concerns? And then before you know it, you've written like the intro or the title of your next book comes to you, something like that.
And that's an interesting point. Seems like that would also be very helpful from like a memoir perspective. I don't write memoir. I've never tried, but I know that there's some people that are very into that. They've got really interesting, dynamic lives that they want to write about. But it seems like this would be a good pathway in that direction. That's not what this conversation is about, though. So we won't we won't click on that. Another thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this confidence piece of it. I see confidence from a writing perspective in two different ways, right? We've talked a little bit about the pre-writing confidence, right?
Yeah.
The confidence in getting to the writing session, finding that inspiration, getting the writing done. How do you account for the confidence post-writing, right? Because they're two different confidences. Like I feel confident that I can write, but then I feel confident that what I've written is worth anything, right? That's kind
Yes.
of a different conversation. We all go through doubts. We all have our what is that word, imposter syndrome. Some people have that situation more than others, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of times when you're writing whatever you're writing where you feel confident in the moment, and then a week later or a day later, sometime later, you look at it and think, ooh, is this even any good? Like,
Mhm.
is this worth reading to anybody? So how do you account for that? How do you gain that type of confidence?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good point. I think, and of course, it's compounded by like when you send it to an editor,
True.
and the
Yeah,
editor
yeah.
has, like, written it up, especially developmental editor, because I also do developmental editing. So like,
Mm,
I kind of, coach my authors to be like, okay, this is what you can expect when you get this, when you get this back. So it's this compounding idea that like once we get the words out on paper, it's better to get them out than it is to get them out perfectly. It's like
mm,
that's what several drafts and stuff take time. And so it's that mindset that you're going to get it out in like that step one. And then after that, it's going to go through this refining and kind of condensing process that really kind of helps make it shine. For that type of confidence of how do I know if I'm writing is any good, then I think it just kind of draws us back to this clarity piece. Like, did
mm.
you write about what you intended to write about? Do you feel that you hit the theme and are you are you inspired? Do you feel like you've hit your why for writing whatever that is? And that's the other thing I think is important to bring up is that it's not, once you have clarity, then you have consistency, then you have confidence. I wish it was, right? But it really is kind of like this huge cycle of like clarity, consistency, confidence, clarity, consistency, confidence. And then sometimes, it's confidence, clarity, consistency. It's just the three components, like they don't necessarily like flow in a nice order, but it's just important to be mindful of them. And sometimes if we're lacking confidence in what we're writing, then we just go back to, is it clear? And I think if we can say, is my intended, are my words that I intended to write, do they come across? You know, am I clear on who I'm serving or who I'm writing for, and clear on the message that I wanted to convey? And if I say yes, then I think that confidence piece of I did what I wanted to do, right? Like that's that check off that list and that goal. Along those lines, I will say that kind of going back to what we said about if you look at a draft and you say, this is terrible, I'm going to highlight and delete it. In my experience, like kind of where like the you know unfamiliar territory, if you will, kind of like seizes up. And so if you can just push through that resistance and just push through that, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Why do I think I can write? I'm not a writer. And if you just push through that, then like on the other side really comes this, I don't want to say like great idea or like magical inspiration, but like just this push forward, I think maybe would be the right way in the direction. And then it's kind of like the skies open up. You know, I know we were talking a little bit before about the weather, you know, where I'm located. So stormy, stormed all night. And then, you know, the sky's clear. And I think if we just like push through that, you know, that moment where we're uncertain and we're feeling that lack of confidence, then we'll see the skies open up and the sun starts shining, or the, you know, the sun start to shine.
Yeah, and that is the lot. There's a lot of good points in there, and I think there's an element of patience, that's for sure, in getting it to where you want it to be. But I do think what you said about going back and taking a look at the clarity piece of it, the whys, the values that you outlined. You know, one of two things can happen, I imagine, for any author. Maybe the answer is yes, you did match those values, you did, you know, follow your whys, whether intentionally or not intentionally. You say you're a pantser, you can feel like, oh yeah, I checked off those boxes, so at least for me the loop has been closed. Or, you know, I can conversely can see, oh, maybe you didn't, you know, maybe you didn't follow that clarity. So I think in that situation, that's when it comes to, well, why? You know, was it because my clarity has changed? Did something happen between the beginning phase and today where I realized, oh no, I wanted to shift some things. I learned new things. We're constantly learning. You know, I learned new things that maybe changed my whys. Or how can I shift what I've written to match more closely the whys? I think maybe that happens more often for some people, which is why editing happens, right? You edit your drafts to match kind of what you hoped it to be. But I think be open, be flexible, recognize that there are oftentimes more than one right way, particularly with writing. And so try to be flexible and not discouraged. I think that's the biggest piece of it. Not discouraged when you have to rework some things, because it's just inevitable.
No, it's a good thing. It really is.
It
Like,
is,
because
yeah.
you got it out, and it's a good thing. You're one step closer to like having it where you can look at it and say, okay.
Absolutely. That is the way to look at it. I am someone who doesn't love editing. Editing is, I'm still learning to like editing. We'll call it that way. It's just not my favorite part of the writing. But you know, once you realize, hey, this is making it better, it is getting me closer to what I would like, my goals, my whys, my clarity, then it can become a fun and positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just giving yourself time, allowance to get to that point. So, what can people expect from you then for this story? I mean, there's a lot more to be said about this framework. I mean, you can dive into each one so much deeper. We barely scratched the surface of this topic. What can people expect on this? You said you're writing a book. Do you have a course? Do you have anything that helps people walk through this? You have coaching services, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I do individual coaching, and I also do group coaching. Right now I have a group coaching that is wrapping up in April, and then I'm going to take the summer off, and then I'm going to be launching my second group program. And this is where I've really just walking through the core components of what we talked about today: clarity, consistency, and confidence further. Lots of workbook, lots of working exercises, demonstrations. We meet together on Zoom. So you have like a cohort and we work together. And right now the progress has been phenomenal. I've gotten great feedback in regards to making progress, being consistent, gaining that clarity. And I think the group program is really a great step. I think it's a great step for people who are new to writing and kind of want to like dip their toes in and see what it's about and say, okay, maybe I need to learn more and see what that looks like. And I also think it's great for those of us that are, writers, seasoned writers, and we want to take that next step in our writing, whether it is working on a book, or, learning how to just write more consistently. So I think it's great to have that. If you go to my website, there's actually an opportunity to like sign up for the wait list, and then you'll have an opportunity to receive an email when the group program goes live again. But I would say that's the best way to get this core clarity, consistency, and confidence, this deep dive into it. I mean, we do a whole bunch of exercises to kind of help delve into that using my spiritual growth perspective and also using the cognitive behavioral, because I also have my master's in psychology. So we just kind of wrap it all up in a little pretty bow and hand it to you.
Just offhand, master's in psychology. I mean, that sounds complicated to me, but I think it's amazing how awesome that you have that resource and that experience to lend to this framework. So this is a perfect segue into how do people find more information about you? You mentioned a website. How can they learn more about your services and your books?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is butterfly-beginnings.com. And so from there, there's more information about group coaching, more information about individual coaching, and also my blog is there. If anyone is on Substack, I guess I can plug my Substack. I just made one.
Okay.
If anyone's on Substack, the name for that is Live and Write Transformed. So you can find me on Substack there. I post articles on writing as, a busy mom, just writing as trying to fit that in your life, and also from the spiritual growth aspect. So that is there as well. And then if you're interested, there's also a free resource on my website on kind of how to flip the script, if you will, like these mindset tips and tricks that we can use to kind of help trick those negative thoughts, those inner critic, those imposter syndromes, and really start to use that fear that we might have as a writer as fuel to get our writing done.
I think that's awesome. This is perfect. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I definitely hope to learn more about it. Hopefully the listeners are excited to learn about it as well.
Yes, thank you so much.